They say childhood memories are like old photographs. Over time, the colors fade, the edges curl, and the faces blur. But some memories are like scars. They don't fade. They just wait under the surface, throbbing with a dull ache until something rips them open again. My grandma used to tell me stories. Scary stories. I've told you about Mr. Longfingers and the special knock. But there was one story she saved for a special occasion. A story she told me on the night of my 5th birthday. For years, I repressed this memory. I locked it away in the darkest corner of my mind. But after weeks of therapy, the door has finally cracked open. And now, I remember. I remember the story. I remember the darkness of my room. And most of all, I remember the gift she gave me that night. Before we begin this final chapter of my grandmother's legacy, if you're new to the ThreadVerse and enjoy diving into the darkest corners of the internet, please subscribe and turn on notifications. You might want to keep the lights on for this one. Now, let's go back to the night I turned 5. The house was quiet. The party was over. The balloons were slowly sinking to the floor in the living room, and the wrapping paper had been stuffed into bin bags. I was tucked up in bed, my small body swallowed by the duvet, but I wasn't sleeping. I was staring at the bedside table. Most of my presents were downstairs: the Lego sets, the action figures, the monsters in my pocket, toys I had begged for. But there was one extra present. A secret present from Grandma. She had given it to me right before bed, whispering that it was special. It sat on my nightstand, a small, lumpy shape wrapped in brown paper. Even in the dim light of my street lamplit room, it looked wrong. It looked watchful. "Grandma, will you tell me a story before bed?" My voice was small, trembling. She was halfway to the door, her silhouette framed by the hallway light. She stopped and turned. Her face was in shadow, but I could feel her smile. "A story?" she asked, walking back towards me. "Well, what kind of story would you like to hear, Christopher?" It was a silly question. Grandma didn't tell fairy tales. She didn't tell stories about brave knights or magical kingdoms. She told stories about things that lived in the drains, things that tapped on windows, things that waited in cupboards. But tonight, with that strange presence sitting next to me, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. "Nothing too scary, Grandma," I whispered. "Please." She paused, raising a perfectly plucked eyebrow. "Not too scary?" She chuckled, a dry, raspy sound like autumn leaves scraping on pavement. "All right then. Since it's your birthday, I think I'll tell you a story about a witch. And don't worry, this one has a happy ending." She sat on the edge of my bed, the mattress sinking under her weight. She reached out and switched on my bedside lamp. The sudden light made me squint, but it also illuminated the present. I tried not to look at it. "Once upon a time," Grandma began, her voice dropping into that familiar storytelling cadence, "there was a young woman named Agatha. Agatha lived in a small cottage by the restless, gray sea. She was a sweet girl, full of life and dreams. She loved painting, she loved reading adventure books by the fire, and she loved her family, her mother and her grandmother, more than anything in the world. It was early summer. The air smelled of salt and blooming wildflowers. Agatha was walking home from school, swinging her satchel, humming a tune. She felt safe. The path was familiar, worn smooth by years of footsteps, but safety is an illusion. Christopher. Up ahead, she saw a boy. He was leaning against an old oak tree, smoking a cigarette. He wore the same school uniform as her, his tie loosened, his shirt untucked. She recognized him vaguely, an older boy, maybe 2 years ahead of her. "Where are you off to, little bird?" he asked, flicking ash onto the grass. Agatha hesitated. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, "Never speak to strangers." But was he a stranger? They went to the same school. The headmaster always said they were one big family. "I'm going home," Agatha said politely, clutching her bag tighter. "My house is just down this path," the boy smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Before you go home, don't you want to see something cool?" Agatha shook her head. "I can't. My mother will worry." She tried to walk past him, but his next words stopped her dead in her tracks. "It's a puppy," he said softly. "Our dog had a litter last week. My dad said I could keep one, but I have to hide it in the old barn. It's so small, so lonely. Don't you want to say hello?" Agatha froze. A puppy. She had wanted a dog her entire life. She imagined a tiny ball of fluff, looking up at her with big, brown eyes, wagging its tail. Just a quick look, she thought. What harm could it do? Is it far?" she asked. "Just across the field," the boy said, offering his hand. "Come on. He's waiting for you." And so, Agatha took his hand. She let him lead her away from the safety of the path, over the stile, and into the tall grass of the meadow. They walked for what felt like miles. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long, distorted shadows. Finally, they reached the barn. It was a rotting, skeletal structure, looming against the darkening sky. The air grew cold. "It's just inside," the boy whispered, his grip on her hand tightening. In the back shadows, Agatha's heart began to pound. Something was wrong. There was no sound of a puppy inside. No whimpering. No scratching. Just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I think I should go back," she stammered, trying to pull her hand away, but the boy didn't let go. He pulled her into the darkness of the barn, and then, from the shadows behind the hay bales, 2 other boys stepped out. They were bigger. Older. And they were laughing. That was the moment Agatha knew. There was no puppy. There was only the dark. My grandma paused for a long time. She stared at the wall, her eyes glassy, as if she were watching a movie playing in her head. I pulled the duvet up to my nose, terrified. "Grandma?" I whispered. She blinked, coming back to the room. When Agatha finally got home, she continued, her voice devoid of emotion. The sun had set. The sea was the color of fresh blood. She stumbled through the front door and collapsed in the hallway, her school dress torn, her knees muddied. It wasn't her mother who found her. It was her grandmother. Now, Agatha's grandmother was a woman of old ways. She knew things. Secrets of the earth and blood. She didn't ask what happened. She took one look at Agatha and she knew. She held the broken girl in her arms until the sobbing stopped. And then, she whispered, "Come with me." She led Agatha into her bedroom. It was a room Agatha usually avoided, filled with strange herbs, jars of liquid, and old, terrifying paintings. But tonight, she felt safe there. The grandmother opened a heavy wooden chest at the foot of her bed. It smelled of cedar and lavender. From inside, she pulled out a sewing kit and a bundle of blank, cream-colored knitted dolls. They were featureless. No mouths. No noses. Just eyes. Black, bead eyes that seemed to stare right into Agatha's soul. "Those boys," the grandmother whispered, her voice like grinding stones. "Describe them to me. Every detail. Their hair. Their eyes. The way they laughed," and Agatha did. Through her tears, she described the monsters who had hurt her daddy. As she spoke, her grandmother's hands moved in a blur. She sewed. She stitched. She tied knots with black yarn. She whispered words in a language Agatha didn't understand, guttural, ancient words that made the candle flames flicker and turn blue. By the time the moon was high in the sky, 3 dolls lay on the bed. They looked crude, simple. But they felt heavy. "Alive, take these," the grandmother said, pressing the dolls into Agatha's hands. "As long as you have these, they can never hurt you again. You hold their fate in your hands now, child. You are the master." 2 days later, Grandma said, leaning closer to me, Agatha was sitting by the window, watching the rain. She felt peaceful. For the first time in days, the fear was gone. Her grandmother burst into the room, clutching a newspaper. Her face was pale as a sheet. Her hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. "Agatha," she cried. "Agatha, what have you done?" She threw the newspaper onto the table. The headline screamed in bold, black ink, "3 local teens found dead in unexplained mass accident." The article described a scene of horror. The boys had been found in their homes. But the injuries were impossible. Agatha didn't look at the paper. She just smiled. A small, cold smile. She stood up and walked to her cupboard. She pulled out a cardboard box and opened it for her grandmother to see. Inside lay the 3 knitted dolls, but they had changed. Each doll had been tortured. Dozens of sewing pins had been driven deep into their knitted heads, piercing the wool skulls. Their bodies were scorched, the yarn below their waists burned black and crispy by a candle flame. Their limbs were twisted at unnatural angles. The grandmother gasped, covering her mouth in horror. "Agatha, my God, did you do this?" Agatha closed the box gently. She took her grandmother's trembling hands and looked her in the eye. "You told me I was the master," she whispered. "And now, they won't be hurting anyone ever again. Isn't that a happy ending, Grandma?" Grandma sat back, smoothing her skirt. "You see, Christopher? A happy ending. The bad men were punished, and the girl was safe." I lay there in the silence, feeling bile rise in my throat. I was 5 years old. I didn't understand everything, but I understood the cruelty. I understood the pins. I understood the burning. "Grandma?" I asked, my voice barely a squeak. "Wait, isn't your name Agatha?" Grandma froze. Slowly, she turned her head to look at me. Her blue eyes twinkled in the lamplight, but there was no warmth in them. Just a vast, deep ocean of secrets. She stood up, leaned over, and kissed me on the forehead. Her lips were ice cold. "Time to sleep, Christopher," she whispered. "And remember, that present I got for you? It's always there. If you ever need it. If anyone ever hurts you, you know what to do." She switched off the light and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. I was left in the dark. Alone. Or so I thought. Slowly, unwillingly, my eyes were drawn to the bedside table. To the lumpy brown package. My fingers trembled as I reached out and tore the paper. Inside was a knitted doll. It was cream-colored. It had no mouth. No nose, just 2 black, beady eyes, staring right at me. Waiting for me to pick up a pin. I still have that doll. It sits in a box in my attic, wrapped in chains. I've never used it. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear scratching coming from inside the box. Grandma Agatha is gone now. But her legacy is sitting right above my head. Thank you for listening to ThreadVerse. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe. And ask yourself, do you know the history of the dolls in your house? Good night. And don't play with needles.